So, hi everybody, it's Marie Jenkins, and welcome to another episode of my podcast, The Secret Diary of Marie Jenkins 47 Plus. Now, today we've got an absolutely fantastic guest for our housing week, and it's Jim Nixon. Hiya, Jim.
Hi, Marie. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. You asking.
Well, it's great that I actually get to interview another podcaster, so I'm really excited about today.
I've done a few podcasts, Marie, but since I started my own podcast, I haven't really been interviewed. So I'm really looking forward. It kind of takes the pressure off.
Yeah, it's role reversal.
Yeah, I'll be back in the seat later. Don't you worry.
I'm sure, and we'll look forward to hearing more about that in a minute. But so tell us a bit more about who you are and what is it you do.
Yeah, I'm Jim Nixon. I've been involved in community safety, Marie, for about 25 years. So I went into policing first. Joined the police in 1995. I didn't join the police too young. I did other jobs first. Sort of got to know the world and got married and had kids first. And I joined when I was 26, and absolutely loved it. Didn't find it easy at the start, to be honest with you. I found it quite a challenge. It was, policing's not an easy profession, and I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit wet behind the ears, really. Even though I was married with a couple of kids, I wasn't the most streetwise. I'd led a bit of a sheltered life, really, so it was a big eye-opener for me. But I absolutely, loved it after that initial training, and when I sort of started to find my feet. And I was very lucky that I had some great tutors, some great people that looked after me and taught me the ropes. And just did various roles for a number of years. I was very, very keen on community policing. Did an awful lot of community policing. Loved that. And then got my stripes. So I got promoted in 2008, and then did a bit of response work, a bit of intelligence work, and then went back into community policing, where I policed some quite tough areas in Warsaw for quite a number of years.
Wow.
And then after 20 years, I just decided I wanted to specialise more in ASB and social behaviour. So an opportunity came up to work with the local housing association that I'd worked with as a police officer, Warsaw Housing Group, WHG, as a lot of you know.
Yeah.
And went there as a community safety manager for 2.5 years. Learned a lot about housing. Thought I knew it all until I went there and realised I didn't know as much as I thought I knew about ASB. And boy, is housing, it's not as simplistic as people like to think. But that was a great grounding for me. And then I was headhunted in, when was it now? But 2018 by, I say headhunted. I was told about the job, give it a go, see where you go with the interview. And I got a job up in Stoke Council as their ASB manager. Took on a very, very failing team. And I mean a failing team. And I'm just really proud that I've turned them around over the 3 years I've been there. And we're now probably in the top quartile of the country, and the team are just doing an amazing job up there, and we've reduced ASB in some areas by 50%, which is really good to
Wow.
good for the community.
That is well impressive, Jim, because obviously, as you know, my background is in housing, and I was head of service for communities. So I know and understand the challenges some of the housing officers have in relation to that sort of area, especially in the more deprived areas. So to achieve that sort of level of improvement is a massive thing.
Yeah.
So you're working in ASB. Where did a podcast come from?
Right. Okay. So what happened was it was during the lockdown of 2020, around about August time. I don't know what it was. I was lying in bed one morning, and I think it was a Sunday morning, and I thought, "Oh, what can I do to try and?" Because I'd been building my sort of my social media network quite strongly, particularly on LinkedIn, and I started to get a little bit of traction on that, and then I just thought, well, what could I do to try and help other practitioners around some of the stuff that we'd done in Stoke to try and improve those areas? So I thought to myself, I'll do a YouTube channel, and what I'll do is I'll do a tip a day, and the idea being was that I wanted to just do a 10-minute tip on things like neighbour disputes, closure orders, injunctions, the use of injunctions alongside criminal matters, which is, I think, sometimes opportunities that are missed. So those kind of things, and it just really went well, and I got some great feedback from it. And then again, I think I think I get all my best inspiration when I'm lying in bed being lazy. But I then thought, oh, you know what? I'd really love to start a podcast. And
Well,
where the love from that comes from is that I've always had a bit of a I want to be a DJ, sort of thing when I was a kid, you know. And when I was in the police as a constable, we ran a very successful neighbourhood team down there in Smethwick in the West Mids. And what we did was, when we were looking at diversionary activities for kids, we went out and we actually asked the kids, what do you want to do?
yeah.
And what came back time and time again is we want to do radio, we want to do DJing. Me and this colleague hadn't got a clue what it was all about. And so what we did was we set up a radio project for them. And in the end, we
Ah,
ended up having our own premises. We had our own board. And one year we actually turned over 300 grand, and we were doing that on top of our day jobs. So again,
well,
that's where that passion for kind of communication and sort of radio come podcast. And then I looked at it and I thought, I can't do ASB because it's too narrow. I thought it was a bit too niche. But then I thought, community safety, how broad is that? So I can do all sorts of conversations with some really key people, not only professionals, but people in the field. Like tonight, for example, I'm interviewing, some of you might know him, ex Wolves goalkeeper Matt Murray. Matt is
right.
a great guy, and we're talking about racism and about hate crime. So you can tap into those kind of people that haven't got the specialist knowledge, but they've actually experienced it at the sharp end. So
Yeah.
that's the inspiration for it, really, Marie. It's about spreading good practice and challenging the norm and trying to transform communities as a collective group. It's about empowerment, I think, really, for me.
You've had some fantastic guests. I'll give you that, Jim. They're very sort
Yeah.
of either at the height of their careers, or you've even had celebrities on. I saw that. What's the lady, the one that's been on?
White D.
Yeah,
White D. No,
that was a
yeah,
fantastic interview.
yeah, Dee is an absolutely amazing, genuine woman. And I said to this on the podcast interview, she's not always had great press, Dee, but you know what? She is an absolute diamond and she's so lovely. And she was so accommodating for the interview. And we just had a ball. It was like I'd met her a couple of times before the interview. We just had a chat. I tend to do
Yeah,
that like we did before ours.
yeah,
But what a lovely person. And we just kind of clicked. And I think that's one of the big things, like with us really today. I think if you're going to be interviewing people, you've got to have that great rapport with them and just treat them like mates. It's just a conversation. I don't
yeah,
get really that nerve. I get nervous before I do the interview, but now I just once I've got the intro out, like you've done today, I absolutely love it.
yeah.
It's like, I don't know, there's something really magical about podcasting. I can't explain it, but it's just took over my life, really. Um,
Well, it completely comes across because I think what you're really clever at, Jim, is putting your guests at ease because, on the light-hearted side of things, yes, you had a really great rapport, but you've also done some really hard-hitting interviews as well, which, they're really serious topics and I think that's all credit to you, really. But can I just take you back a little bit? You was talking about your work in relation to ASB and how you've managed to help improve things at Stoke. Can you give me a bit more background for our listeners about some of the things that you've managed to do intervention wise? What sorts of things have you sort of put in place?
I think a couple of the really key things for me, Marie, is number one, I think we looked at our policy and procedure and we made it very bespoke. I was very lucky that I identified that I wanted to bring in somebody that I'd worked with over a number of years. You've probably all heard of Janine Green, who has been
Yes.
she's actually been an ASB manager like myself at Sandwell Council, and she's been MD of Resolve, and she's now got her own consultancy around ASB. So I brought Janine in because I wanted the team to get that kind of third party perspective as well. So what we did was we designed a policy and procedure with the team, not at them.
Yeah.
So we empowered them to kind of look at what we were trying to achieve. We had some days where we would sit down with the team and we'd look at how we would shape that policy and procedure. And as I've been doing quite a lot of training recently, and I think what's really come across in some of that training is teams don't know what their policies and procedures say. So if they don't know what their policies and procedures say, how do they hope to go out there and actually deliver a service? So I think that was the big one thing for me. And then the other thing was really good quality training. So again, I got Janine to come in and do some really good quality training with not only my team, but we actually invited some of the key police officers, and we also invited some of the key other partners to sit in on that training too. And I think that has really made a massive, massive difference that we've collaborated together. And I think those are the two key sort of elements for me.
Yeah.
And then I think it's about getting officers to understand that you are, particularly with your housing related nuisance and annoyance, that it's a lower threshold and that you don't have to go out there and get a massive amount of evidence to be able to prove a civil case. I think a
Yeah.
lot of officers get tied up in this. I've got to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. That's my standard of proof. But actually, they're working on the balance of probabilities. Their standard of proof is so much lower. So I think it's getting that across to them. They don't need war and peace, particularly for a without notice injunction, where all the judge is looking at is that, has the definition been met? And, is it just inconvenient? Is it necessary and proportionate to grant the order?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things we've tried to get across to the team. And I think one of the things I'm really proud of is that we haven't changed any of the personnel in that 3 years. We've actually just empowered them. I've used that word a few times, but I think it's really important for me.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of that, because I think sometimes a manager, like if you take the football analogy, new manager takes over, goes in, changes all the team, and that's how they become successful. But actually, I've taken a team that is quite underperforming, but willing, and we've created a really good team because they've been willing to learn, they've embraced our changes, but we've involved them every step of the way. And I think that makes the difference, that we haven't just preached to them, we've involved them. And I think they're the key elements really for me.
I'd absolutely echo what you say there, Jim, purely because when I was managing our housing officers, a lot of the time, like you said, they were very willing, whether it was due to needing more training or in our circumstances, it was around their confidence. So they
Massive.
knew their stuff, but it was their knocking confidence. So what we did, we put in service level agreements with a solicitor firm, and so that they'd got like a hotline, if you like, just to have somebody who's got that expert knowledge in all of the different enforcement areas that you can use, just to give them that extra bit of confidence. And I think you're absolutely right, by empowering your team, that's what's going to get the best out of them. So yeah, fair play.
Absolutely. I think well, the other thing for me as well, Marie, is about so if we use a noise complaint, for example, what might cause you nuisance and annoyance might not cause me nuisance and annoyance. And I get that. And I also get the fact that people still need, whether it's ASB or not, people still need help and they need support. So it could be a vulnerability issue like mental health that's causing them to be so sensitive to that noise. But I
Yeah.
think where we've been very good at, and this is what me and Janine have taught them, is it may be nuisance and annoyance, but it may not be unreasonable. And an example I would give you is a party situation where, say, somebody has a one-off party, it goes on, not into the wee small hours, but it goes on. It's a one-off. I
Yeah.
know officers have opened a case on that, and you think, why? Ultimately, it's a one-off. And another example would be, a child crying, a baby crying. I dealt with a case recently where it was down to the child's infantile eczema that was causing the problem.
Yeah.
Parents were doing absolutely everything, but certain partners wanted to slap a CPW on those parents.
Yeah.
But by getting to the nitty gritty of it, making sure there were no safeguarding concerns, explain that to the complainants, prevented that absolutely exploding, and the child started to get better, and then obviously it started to sleep better during the night. So
Yeah.
again, I think it's looking at those kind of issues and not not trying to please. And I'm not saying that in an unprofessional way, but what I'm saying is, I think sometimes there's an onus sometimes on the ASB officers to overpromise and
Yeah.
underdeliver. And I actually say, look, we need to do the opposite. We need to underpromise and overdeliver, or at least be realistic in what we can achieve.
Yeah, it's
Um,
about managing expectations, isn't it, really?
managing expectations, that's exactly it, and I
Yeah,
use that terminology quite a lot with my team. You've got
yeah,
to manage those expectations, because unfortunately in communities now, Marie, people want you to run their lives for them. And again, what I say, when you get these tit for tat neighbour disputes, unfortunately what happens is psychology comes into it,
yeah,
and you get a situation where people forget about the original complaint that they've complained about, and it just becomes about that spat between the two neighbours or the two families. So it's about managing that, and managing it really early doors, and using mediation to good effect as well. I think a lot of organisations don't use mediation quickly enough, but we use it very early doors, and that can make a massive difference.
early intervention is, from what you've just said, and the sort of things that housing officers receive complaints about. If you had more proactive approaches to putting early interventions in place, it would just make more for a harmonious community.
I think the other thing for me as well, Marie, is that and I know it's been difficult during COVID, but we talk an awful lot about possession. And I just think possession, I think this is what my housing experience taught me, was, you want to sustain tenancies as a housing professional. You don't want to be kicking people out of their houses. You're going to be losing rent. You've then got the void turnover costs, getting a new family in there. For
Yeah,
me, you've got to look at the root cause of the problem. And like, for example, it could be drugs, it could be alcohol. Don't get me wrong, there are certain families that you're never gonna get back on track, and they need to be evicted. But for me, it's few and far between, because we talk a lot about partnership work, but what I see sometimes is a lot of just moving the problem around. It doesn't actually solve the problem. You may move a family from one location to another, but
yeah,
actually, is the problem solved? No, it's not, because some other family then is going to suffer because of that family. So for me, it's about getting into the root cause of the problem and seeing what you can do to help, and only look at eviction and injunctions at the point where you can't go anywhere else.
yeah.
I think that's another key for it.
I'd agree. Tenancy sustainment is a
Absolutely,
win-win for both housing associations and for the communities. So
it is.
it's a complete win-win. So you're also doing consultancy yourself now, separate from Stoke. Is that right? And you said about training.
Yeah, I've been really lucky. I set up my own consultancy, which is like Jim Nixon sort of community safety and ASB consultancy. But I'll be honest with you, Marie, I tend to sort of work with other organisations. So I sort of subcontract. So I do some work for Janine Green, ASB, so as an associate, and there's a couple of other sort of organisations that I do work for as well. And Stoke have been brilliant. They've been so supportive and allowing me the time to do that. Obviously I have to take time out of my day and make sure that's all above board. But yeah, they've been absolutely brilliant, and I absolutely love it. I just think it's great to pass on your I'm not an expert, and I don't profess to be an expert, and I think it's a wrong terminology to use. I'm always learning. Every day is a school day for me.
Yeah,
But I think what I've learned across the three different disciplines, in terms of, I've got the police experience, the housing experience, and now the local authority experience.
yeah,
I think those three disciplines put you in a good position to be able to teach people, a wider, broader approach to ASB, rather than just that kind of narrow approach. So I think it's given me those skills to be able to help quite a lot of organisations. I've actually done some training this morning with an organisation, and you get a real sense of achievement when you know that what you're telling them is giving them new, fresh ideas to be able to tackle some of the problems that we've just been talking about. So yeah,
yeah.
it's I love it, absolutely love it. It's not about the money for me; it's useful, but it's about passing on that experience.
Well, I think that's what makes your hosting skills as a podcaster with the Community Safety podcast so valuable, because you can pull on each of your various areas of expertise. Now, talking about your podcast that I mentioned earlier, I've listened to a number of them now. Who for you has stood out? Who's been your favourite person to interview and why, more importantly?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great interviews, but I think the one for me is Caroline Good, honour-based violence. The reason for that is it was a case that was very, although I wasn't directly involved in the case, and just quickly for the audience, this was a young girl who had been brought over from Kurdish Iraq as a young girl, and they settled in London, and she was effectively forced into a marriage with a man that beat her and abused her. And she had the courage to leave that marriage and set up a new relationship with a new man. And her family effectively had a meeting and decided that she had dishonored the family and we're gonna take her life. It was an
Wow,
horrific set of circumstances.
wow,
The way that she was murdered, and Caroline was just one of the most amazing guests that I've ever come across. Absolutely in awe of the woman. She was that two of the offenders actually fled to Iraq, and we'd never ever in our history ever extradited people back from Iraq to face prosecution in this country. And that woman made it happen. I was just in awe of
wow.
her. She was, and the thing is, she was just a lovely, lovely woman and genuinely cared about that victim,
Yeah,
genuinely cared. And even to this day, when you talk to Caroline about that particular case, you can see that it almost brings tears to her eyes. And I know for a
yeah,
fact she, even to this day, still visits Benazzi's grave. Because what they said at the
right,
time was because her family disowned her, that they would take on that surrogacy. So effectively, Caroline took on the surrogacy sort of mum of that young woman, and
yeah,
yeah, that was probably by far the. I mean, there's been some amazing interviews. Don't get me wrong, but that one was the one that really made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Really, it was a long interview, but a great one.
yeah, yeah. And we'll share details about how people can go in and listen to your podcast in a
Yeah,
minute,
brilliant.
Jim. But before we do, then, what's been the most rewarding of all your different skill sets and your career changes? What's been the most rewarding, would you say?
I think I think if I look back at my policing career, Marie, I mean, I'm helping a lot of people now, but I think I've helped quite a few people over the years to overcome certain sort of traumas, domestic violence victims who, we've looked after and got them back on track. So I think, it's that kind of saving lives really and getting people's lives back on track. And we talk a lot about this in the podcast, and I think it touches on a little bit about what we were talking about eviction earlier. I think we've
Yeah,
got to start writing people in rather than writing people off. And this was something I
yeah,
got from one of my guests, really. I always had that kind of view, but I never looked at it like that. But I think, we've got to start writing people in rather than writing people off because people can change.
yeah,
There aren't that many bad people out there. If you look at most people that cause problems in society, there's a story to tell and there's a history to it and there's a reason to it. I'm not saying that you're going to solve every single person's complex needs, but I do think that we need to start working in a different way to approach those needs so that we can start to improve communities for the better. Complex, I know,
yeah.
but start with the success rate of one, and you aren't going to go far wrong.
And
So
that
I think
was,
it's that really.
yeah, I was going to say, one of your guests, what was the guy that you had on? And he'd got a massive background in criminality.
Yeah, that's actually where the writing right off came from. It was a guy called Paul Wormsley. Paul was an ex-drug dealer and quite a high-level drug dealer. He was on the run for 5 years. He was actually he originates from Liverpool, and he was actually Britain's most wanted criminal for 5 years.
Wow.
And Paul has basically gone to prison. He's turned his life around. He's doing some great work with young people now up in Liverpool and further afield. So again, Paul at one time probably on paper was a multimillionaire through his drug dealing activities, but he recognises now that that wasn't a great life. He came close to being killed on a couple of occasions, where he tells a story in the interview about where he was ambushed and he was effectively kidnapped and held prisoner and thought his life was going to end. I think he had petrol poured all over him,
Oh my
and
goodness.
managed, unbelievable
Wow.
story. But he's completely turned his life around, and is doing some amazing work. And again, we talk a lot on his particular interview about seeing the good in young people and trying to help them rather than just writing them off and just casting them aside. I don't want to take young people down the criminal justice route. I want to get them the help and support that they need so that they can make good in their lives, and in turn that improves society and improves communities.
I completely agree. Completely agree. And I really like the fact that you've had such a really wide range of guests on there. So who's your ideal guest? Who inspires you? Who would you think, oh, I'd really love them on my podcast?
Well, I'm working on a few at the moment.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much because we're doing 20 this season, and then we're going to do another 20 and then see where it takes us. So there's a few, but I want to keep you guessing. In terms of who has really inspired me and helped me within my career is someone I've already mentioned today, really, and that's Janine Green. Me and Janine met many, many, many years ago when she was quite a young girl. I think she was only about 21, 22. And she was working for a private sort of ASB company that were helping local authorities and housing associations to deal with their ASB. And
Yeah.
we did a closure order as part of the old 2000, I think it was the old 2003 Act. And we did a closure order together when I was in the police back then. And we've just kept in touch over the years, and I've picked her brains. But she's been an amazing mentor for me. And I'm now working for her as a consultant
Yeah.
and as an associate. So she's been very loyal to me too, and we really kind of bounce off ideas. And she's a great inspiration to me, and I will always be indebted to her for what she's done for my career. So yeah, she's someone I very much look up to, and she does some great work across the sector, as you probably know.
Well, I do, but as do you, and we've half an hour has just flown by today, Jim.
I know it
I'm
goes
really
quick, doesn't it?
excited. I'm really excited about your future episodes. Um, when this comes out, I believe you'd have launched a brand new website as well. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. I've been really lucky. I was saying to you before we switched record on. I've been so overwhelmed by the people that have helped us, and I've got quite a lot of people that are actually doing stuff for free. Believe it or not, my editor does everything for free. My show notes lady does everything for free. I've just had someone come in and help me with some social media. I think it's because people buy into it. I think people have bought into what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
There's a real why about what we're doing here. It's not just a podcast. It genuinely is about transforming communities in the 21st century and ultimately saving lives. So I think people really resonate with that, whether you're an ASB professional, community safety professional, or just a member of the public that is genuinely interested in changing those communities. We're actually going to be doing some work with Neighbourhood Watch next week. I've recently interviewed
Ah.
the chief executive of Neighbourhood Watch, Jonathan Haywood Crisp, and his interview is going out next week as part of Neighbourhood Watch Week. So it's great that we're
Ah.
collaborating with really high-profile organisations that also want to do great work in the community too. So yeah, I absolutely love it. But yeah, the website should be out next week. And if people want to tap into it, it's www.thecommunitysafetypodcast.co.uk. That's www.thecommunitysafetypodcast.co.uk. There is a website on there already, so you can tap into all of the episodes. And we're on all the normal podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google, and also, as you know, Marie, you can get on Alexa now as well. So all you got to do is just say, play the Community Safety Podcast, Alexa, and she'll play it for you.
I thought that was really clever when I saw that, Jim. I thought,
I don't know where I get these moments of inspiration from. I really don't.
well, they're fantastic, and I wish you all the very best success for your future episodes, and may you continue to go on strength to strength. I think your whole setup there, for those people that are watching on YouTube, Jim's got a fantastic setup. And so if you're listening in, he's completely sold on doing this podcast thing
I
for
love it.
good, I think.
Oh yeah, I will be. Yeah, I think there'll be taking me out in a box before I give this up, I think. Yeah,
Well,
thanks,
many
Marie.
more to come.
Yeah, thank you, Marie. I really appreciate your time, and showing the interest in the podcast. I really do think your listeners will get a lot from it if they give it a listen.
Yeah.
But thank you for your support. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, it works both ways, Jim. It's been an absolute delight. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thanks, Marie. Thank you very
All
much.
the
Thank you to
best.
listeners as well. Take care.